Hi everyone, my name is Kylie Cato. I'm a student here at Anderson University, and I'm currently taking an abnormal psychology class. Today, me and you will be going through a study on PTSD. First up, what is PTSD? PTSD stands for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, and that comes with many definitions. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, PTSD is defined as a disorder that develops in some people who have experienced a shocking, scary, or dangerous event, while the National Cancer Institute defines PTSD as an anxiety disorder that develops in reaction to physical injury or severe mental or emotional distress. There's also another belief about PTSD. Many believe that PTSD does not exist. It is simply in your head. I'm here to tell you today that that is quite frankly a myth. So, let's go through some statistics on PTSD. 5 out of 100 adults in the US have been diagnosed with PTSD. And women are in fact more likely to develop PTSD than men are. There are 3 common events that lead to PTSD. First, there is combat. This is what you see in our war veterans. Next, we have childhood abuse and sexual violence. So a little historical background about PTSD. For many years, PTSD was referred to as shell shock. We see this very often during the 100-Year War and mentioned in many historic documents. Shakespeare even refers to an illness as shell shock. But in many of our historical documents, when talking about PTSD, it's kind of referred to as men cursed with nightmares of battle or death. Then, PTSD seemed to be referred to as the 1,000-year stare. It was a blank look with dissociative demeanor and severe exhaustion. It was seen most oftenly on the battlefield. Soldiers were just simply exhausted from being at war, and they couldn't do anything but just stare off and disassociate. Typically, though, these moments of exhaustion and a blank look were followed by hysteria. After some time, PTSD, it was found that it's not just soldiers that experience it. Many people refer to it as railway spine, where people who witnessed a very severe railroad accident developed bouts of hysteria and nightmares. In 1915, the term shell shock was actually introduced to the medical field and became a diagnosis. While in 1974, rape trauma syndrome was coined. This is PTSD, but it's PTSD in response to sexual violence. Okay, so the DSM-5 actually gives us multiple criteria that have to be met for a person to be diagnosed with PTSD. The first is exposure to actual or threatened death, serious injury, or sexual violence. Next is presence of one or more intrusive symptoms, associated events, and beginning when the event occurred. Persistent avoidance of stimuli associated with the traumatic event beginning after the event occurred. Negative alterations in cognitions and mood associated with the traumatic event, beginning or worsening after the event. Marked alterations in arousal and reactivity associated with the traumatic event. The duration of this disturbance is more than 1 month, and the disturbance causes significantly clinically distress or impairment in areas of function. Disturbance is not attributed to substance use. Now, because every single person is different, the way this looks can be different. While one person might experience their intrusive symptoms as nightmares, the other one might experience it as flashbacks. While one's mood might be sadness, the other moods might be severe anger. No 2 people are alike, and the DSM has made its criteria fit those differences. So what is the treatment plan? How can we help people who are experiencing this? Scientifically, evidence has found that therapy is the best route to go. Cognitive behavioral therapy, prolonged exposure therapy, cognitive processing therapy, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, stress inoculation therapy, and group therapy have all been found to work in cases of helping PTSD. They have also found that some medications also work. Zoloft and Paxil have been the ones that lead to the most evidence of help, while there are other SSRIs that do help as well. So to learn more about this, I decided to reach out to specialists, and I had an interview with Dr. Jason Neal. So Dr. Jason Neal has specialized in trauma. He is currently an associate professor here. He is currently an associate professor here at Anderson in psychology. He has a bachelor's of psychology, a master's in biblical counseling, a master's in biblical studies, and also a PhD in counselor's education. Dr. Neal has worked extensively with trauma patients, and he has met many people who have been diagnosed with PTSD. During his time working directly with trauma patients, he used Dr. Ross's trauma model. The trauma model, Dr. Ross blends CBT, systems, psychodynamic, and experimental principles to help others. In our conversation, I asked Dr. Neal, what do you wish everyone knew about PTSD? He said, first off, do not minimize the event. There is no such thing as just abuse or just war. It was abuse and it was war. It was a traumatic event. Also, take your time to work and heal from your trauma. It's not going to happen overnight. Please do not expect it to be. Don't expect it to be at a rapid pace. Healing takes time and it takes patience. Next, let's discuss the biblical perspective on PTSD. While the Bible does not directly talk about PTSD, there are many psychologists who believe that there are cases of it in the Bible. The main case of that is with King Saul. King Saul was a soldier, and many stories about him, it talks about him reliving traumatic events, experiencing emotional distress, and being constantly plagued with fear. He meets the criteria of someone who would be diagnosed with PTSD. Also, there are no verses that directly talk about PTSD, but there were some verses that I felt those diagnosed with PTSD should hear. I wanted to share this with you today. First, Psalms 91, 4-6. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrows that fly by day, nor the pestilence that stalk in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. There are terrible things happening in our world, traumatic things, but the Lord is protective. The Lord is with you. And next, I wanted to share Revelation 21, 4-7, which states, He will wipe away every tear from your eye. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. He who has seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. Then he said, write this down, for these words are trusty and true. He said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give water, without cost, from the spring of the water of life. Those who are victorious will inherit all this, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. The Lord has promised his children an eternity with him that is perfect and beautiful. We can count on that. So I want to thank you for spending time going through this study with me, and I leave you with my references. Thank you. Have a great day.